Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. I hope that you're having a wonderful day. If you're new here, my name is Neve and it would mean the world to me if you would stick around. Today's video is my August reading roundup and I'm quite excited because I am very happy with what I read this month. So I'm just gonna get started. I feel like I've donned my dark academia. Like autumn is starting to come in and I am fully ready to embrace it. I have on my like billowy shirt and this like sleeveless vest. I feel very Hugh Grant in every movie he was in before he turned 40, which is exactly what I aspire to be always, so no complaints. I've also made a cup of tea because I'm filming quite late at night and I want to be cozy, so tea in my favourite mug. If this has inspired you and you would also like a cup of tea whilst you watch this video, please pause it and go make a cup of tea. I'm firmly of the belief that everything is better with a cuppa, so I will wait for you, or you know, you'll make me wait, but you get what I mean, for you to be ready and comfy with your tea or coffee or hot chocolate or whatever, and we can get started. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, so the first book I read this month, which I mentioned briefly I think in last month's roundup, was Normal People by Sally Rooney. This book is a bit of a phenomenon at the minute, as is Sally Rooney in general, but Normal People has most certainly been in the spotlight recently because of the TV adaptation that came out last year, 2019. I'm not 100% sure actually when the TV show came out, but you get what I want. Onto an actual review of the book. I really enjoyed this. I gave it like a 3 out of 5 because I definitely don't think I was blown away by it the way that a lot of other people were, but I enjoyed myself reading this book. I didn't find myself like checking how long I had left to go or like timing how long I'd taken to read it. I just read it and took it in and I enjoyed it. My favourite character of the two protagonists in this book is definitely Connell. There's something about him that just felt much more human to me than Marianne. Yeah. Not that there is not inescapable humanity in both of them, which is the point, I suppose, is that they are very imperfect, somewhat self-destructive people, and that is unfortunately a trait that a lot of young people see in themselves, and as someone who is the ages roughly that they are, yeah, I see it and I feel a lot of it, and I understood a lot of Marianne's monologues and her sort of like running commentary of her thoughts in her life and her opinions of herself, and a lot of it is very relatable. But there was just something about Marianne's character to me that just felt frustrating. Which I know like people say is a lot of the point of Sally Rooney's books, like it is to look at what happens when you don't communicate, and I enjoyed that, and I liked that it was two people just really fumbling about a relationship and fucking it up and somehow loving each other anyway. I found that so beautiful, and the joy it gave for the fact that maybe the thing to strive for isn't perfection, it's for connection and whatever, right? Like I very much felt that, and I was so invested in their relationship. I did just find Marianne incredibly frustrating sometimes though, and I think that detracted from the book slightly, because I just felt like at some points being like, just say something, or don't say anything, or like, you know, don't do this thing that you clearly don't want to do and know you shouldn't do, because bad things will happen when you do it, and then they do happen and I'm like, see. But I also like felt so much empathy for like the very frustrating path that Marianne's life has taken her to, and the factor that it plays in like where she is and who she is, and obviously like she had a bit of a go of it, but then part of me was just like, see if someone says, are you okay, and you could just say like, no, problem would be solved. Like, do you know what I mean? I don't know, I equally adored this book and was so angry at this book. and I know a lot of that was the point, which is why I was edging sort of towards 4 stars, but something about it just was slightly underwhelming from expectation for me. I think it probably just was Marianne, unfortunately. I loved Connell though. I found him so fascinating. I thought he was so realistic, and I really like the way Sally Rooney writes. I thought like the lack of speech marks and all of that was just so interesting, and it really makes you pay attention, I think, and not in a bad way that I thought it might be. Like I thought I might be like trying to tell the difference between like dialogue and not dialogue, but I didn't find it difficult. I just felt engaged. So I would very much like to, and I'm planning on reading her other 2 novels. I'm gonna have a drink and then we'll move on. Okay, the next thing I read this month was not a book, but it was A Streetcar Named Desire by Tennessee Williams, which, if you are unfamiliar with, is a play. There is a movie, I'm sure, with Marlon Brando in it, but I've not seen the film. A Streetcar Named Desire follows Southern Belle Blanche Dubois, who is sort of standing on the edge between sanity and insanity, and what happens when her last ditch attempt at saving herself might end up being the thing that ensures her destruction. It's just interesting. I found the play so interesting to read because it was very different to what I thought it was about. Like I had in my head that this was about sort of sex and how destructive sex can be, and that's not what it's about. Well, it is a little bit, but like not in the way I thought it was. It's much more focused on Blanche and her psyche and her relationships and the way she connects with other people than I was expecting it to be, and I really enjoyed that. And there were just so many aspects of this play that I just thought were so clever, and just like the thought whilst I was reading it of what they would look like on a stage was like, oh, amazing. Like Blanche hears this song in her head when she thinks about the man she fell in love with when she was younger, because it's the song that he died, like he died whilst the song was playing, and the way that it intersects with the other music that you hear in the background, like in the, what are they called? Oh, raging. What are they called? Like the stage direction? No. Oh my god, I am a drama student. How have I lost? You know what I'm talking about though, the bits that are like, is there one here? The bits that are in brackets that are like, the polka music dies out again, like enter state, those stuff. The way though that intersect those, like in the stage direction, you could read like how the playwright envisioned the production aspects of the play coming together with the acting to really create this atmosphere where you get to see this woman fall apart was so interesting to me, because I could so viscerally like envision it, even though I couldn't like I wasn't maybe familiar with the song, and like, do you get what I mean? There is a production of this play done by the National Theatre where Gillian Anderson plays Blanche Dubois on National Theatre at Home, the streaming service, and I am going to get a subscription, I think, just so I can watch this, because I'm like, so I need to see her do it. I need to see her do it. I would love to see it in real life, because there's something about the dialogue in this play and the way that the characters speak that is so like human in a really ugly way, but that altogether makes something so like fascinating and powerful and emotional in a way that is not entirely ugly. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's just such an interesting play. I definitely had a great time reading it, and I would love to be able to go and see a production of it. I need to calm the theatre nerd out a bit. Okay, so the last book that I read this month was The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I feel like this month I really just hit out like classics or really popular books. Like I was like, is that a book I feel like I should read at least once? Well, guess when I'm gonna read it? August. But yeah, so the Bell Jar is semi-autobiographical, I think, but they don't specify that in the blurb or anything, so I'll just read you the blurb. Working in New York one hot summer, Esther Greenwood is on the brink of her future, yet she's also on the edge of a darkness that makes her world increasingly unreal. In this vivid and unforgettable novel, Esther's vision of the world shimmers and shifts. Day-to-day New York living, her crazed men friends, and hot dinner dances. And then there's like an excerpt from the book as part of the blurb, and it says, "A girl lives in an out-of-the-way town for 19 years, so poor she can't afford a magazine. And then she gets a scholarship to college and wins a prize here and there and ends up steering New York like her own private car. Only I wasn't steering anything, not even myself." There you go. I really enjoyed this novel. It was so different from what I expected it to be, and yet so similar to what I thought it was going to be. Like I think in my head this was going to be more bitter and dark and melancholy than it actually ended up being in tone. Like I was expecting for this to be a hard book to stomach, but it wasn't, which I don't know if I'm glad for or not. Actually, I think it would be interesting to see what it was like written like really heavily, but it's actually just quite frank and very personable almost. Like Esther is describing to you the worst time of her life, but she's doing it in such a like matter of fact way at some point that you're kind of, you forget that this, you don't forget that it's horrible, you are aware that it's horrible, but you do feel like you're observing it after it's happened, if that makes sense. Which I think some people probably wouldn't be a fan of, but I did find it really interesting. I also thought the imagery in this book was so interesting. Like, I mean, I'm on no means an expert, and there have been a lot of really cool imagery that I missed. There is a metaphor in here about a fig tree that is very popular. Like, I think it's really well known, and it was just so interesting to read because it just felt very accurate. Like, here it is. I saw my life branching out before me like the green fig tree in the story. From the tip of every branch, like a fat purple fig, a wonderful future beckoned and winked. One fig was a husband, a happy home and children, and another fig was a famous poet, and another fig a brilliant professor, and another fig was E.G., the amazing editor, and another fig was Europe and Africa and South America, and another fig was Constantine and Socrates and Attila and a pack of other lovers with queer names and offbeat professions. And another fig was an Olympic lady crew champion, and beyond and above these figs were many more figs I couldn't quite make out. I saw myself sitting in the crotch of this fig tree, starving to death, just because I couldn't make up my mind which of the figs I would choose. I wanted each and every one of them, but choosing one meant losing all the rest. And as I sat there, unable to decide, the figs began to wrinkle and go black, and one by one they plopped to the ground at my feet. There you go. Yeah, the imagery in this is really interesting. And I think, like, obviously the book is called The Bell Jar because she, like, basically describes that she feels like she's living in a bell jar, and I thought that that was such an interesting way to like describe that feeling, because I know what that feeling is, not perhaps to the extent that Esther is experiencing it, but there's something so accurate and revealing about comparing it to living in a bell jar, the way that it sort of like suppresses you and how like clammy and stiff and still that experience can be, like the not moving and the being stuck and the, like, I don't know, there's something just so genius just about that, above, like, without even mentioning any of the rest of it. So yeah, I highly recommend this book. It's also got one of the most like catching opening lines, I think, of a book I've read in a long time. And also then when you read the rest of the book, I just think it's such a good opening line for the book that it's the opening line of, if that makes sense. And I don't know how to explain what that means or why that's a point I'm choosing to make, but it just is. It's a good opening line and it's a good book. And I thought the protagonist was really interesting, and I was so endlessly amused by how much she hates men. Like, I've bookmarked a couple of phrases in the book that I liked, and one of them was, and I knew that in spite of all the roses and kisses and restaurant dinners a man showered on a woman before he married her, what he secretly wanted when the wedding service ended was for her to flatten out underneath his feet like Mrs. Willard's kitchen mat. And yeah, because it is, I think, something that a lot of women fear and a lot of women experience, and it taps into something that is very true about what men as a collective, not necessarily men individually, and I'm not having this argument with my colleagues, I don't want a man to be like, oh, I'm not all men, how they see women and how they see their status over women and how they see the way a relationship should be made up. Especially in like the 60s when this was set, the 50s, 60s that this was set. And I just found it so amusing because the whole book she's like, I couldn't bear the thought of having to work for a man. I can't bear the thought of getting married to a man. These men are gross. And it's just like, do you know what? Fair enough. Fair enough. You go, girl. Tear these men to shreds. I will clap. And I did. And I really enjoyed this book, and if you haven't read it, I definitely think you should. Okay, so that is all for today's video. I hope that you enjoyed. I hope that my reviews pushed you to go and purchase one of those books, purchase books by one of those authors, pick up one of those books you've had on your shelf for a while and just haven't got round to, etc, etc. Maybe they didn't. I hope you enjoyed spending the time watching it anyway. Let me know in the comments below what books you read in August, what your favourite book you read this month was, a book you never got round to reading this month but that you're aiming to read in September, anything. Just tell me something. Tell me something. And I will see you next week. Bye.